Topic of conversation for this video is what role should schools play in preparing students to become media and digitally literate? And what that looks like in today's society is very different than what it looked like even 10 years ago. So one of the readings that we provided class for the class this week was one by Neil Anderson about making a case for media literacy in the classroom. And Anderson suggests that we need to provide our students with the skills to be able to function within the literacy that is available and surrounding them today, not literacy just as books and paper, and allowing them to feel confident and comfortable with those skills because we've provided them the opportunities to engage with them in school. So one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, what is media literacy? And literacy is no longer, like we said, just books and just paper. It involves media, information, networks. It's a global conversation, and it's about digital citizenship. And no longer is it just about the basic skills, but it's about still using those basic skills, but using them to enhance the media and the global and the digital part. And yes, those basic skills are important and they need to be taught. We need to talk about fluency, but we also need to talk about fluency in terms of how we collaborate, what creativity looks like, how we take information and we use that fluently. And we need to provide our students with the skills to be able to critically understand the nature, techniques, and impacts of media messages. And Media Smarts is a wonderful website for helping us do that. And understanding that is something that takes time, and learning from others is important. And we have someone to share a little bit of thoughts with you here on that.
Again, this goes back to, is it pedagogy or digital pedagogy that is separate? And it's the same thing with literacy. When you say to, basically anybody, if you think about literacy, they default right away to reading and writing. And we see literacy as a huge thing and how we communicate. So we really work with our students to look at the way they develop media and basically who is the audience, who is sharing this. And what we're finding is that when students realize that they're creating different media and anybody in the world can see it, their work is elevated as opposed to I'm simply just writing an essay for the teacher.
So our question to you is, what are you currently doing to elevate your students' experiences with media in the classroom?
Within media education, there are key concepts of media literacy that students and teachers need to understand. There are 5 core concepts as well as 5 key questions of media literacy to help guide students' understanding of media. The first core concept is all media messages are constructed. One question that students can learn to ask is, who created this message? The second core concept is that media messages are constructed using a creative language with its own rules. A question that students can ask is, what creative techniques are used to attract my attention? The third core concept is that different people experience the same media messages differently. A question that students can ask is, how might different people understand this message differently than me? The fourth core concept is media have embedded values and points of view. A key question that students can ask is, what values, lifestyles, and points of view are represented in and or admitted from this message? The fifth core concept is that most media messages are organized to gain profit and or power. Students need to learn to ask, why is this message being sent? These core concepts and guiding questions help students understand media better. We have a challenge for you. We want you to consider, how are you committed to addressing the key concepts of media literacy in your teaching practices? What are the benefits of teaching media literacy? Here are the top 10 reasons why to teach media literacy. 1. It encourages engagement with multimedia culture. It encourages young people to question, evaluate, understand, and appreciate their multimedia culture. 2. It brings the world into the classroom. It engages young people in real-world issues. 3. It allows for student-centered learning. It transforms the teaching process into an inquiry process and allows the teacher to learn alongside the students. 4. It meets kids where they're at. The media is a part of life that all kids enjoy, and the media creates a shared environment. 5. Skills to work with sophisticated forms of communication. It allows students to understand by doing and this helps to prepare them for a workforce that increasingly demands the use of media. 6. Students see themselves as active citizens. It engages young people in real-world issues. 7. It deepens understanding of diversity. It helps youth understand how media portrayals can influence how they view different groups in society. 8. It helps personal growth and social development. By exploring the connections between popular culture and their own attitudes, lifestyle choices, and self-image. 9. It builds an understanding of real life and fantasy. Media literacy helps children critique media representations by teaching them to distinguish between reality and fantasy. And 10. Allows for development of critical thinking and search skills. Media education is an essential component of information communications technology education. Here are the top 10 reasons why to teach media literacy. The following quote is a quote from one of the readings that we provided this week. And this quote shows why media literacy skills are so important in today's society. It talks about that as humans, we are obsolete as a memory bank, and that education needs to be geared towards the handling of data rather than the accumulation of data. The next video is Michael Wesch speaking on the same topic.
I'm going to make the basic argument today that we need to move our students from simply being knowledgeable, that is knowing a bunch of stuff, which is basically what we're trying to do when we line them up in these big lecture halls and dump information on them. We need to move them to being knowledge able, that is able to find, sort, analyze, ultimately criticize, and even create new information and not.
Now we want you to consider, how does teaching media literacy bump up against your current teaching pedagogies? What benefits are your students missing out on with your current teaching practices?
Now that we've built an understanding of what media literacy means and what it can look like, it's time for us to think about what that looks like in our classrooms, what that looks like in a primary classroom, a middle years classroom, or a high school classroom, or even when you're sitting around the table with family and friends and talking about the media that consumes our world today. One of the great spaces provided for teachers is MediaLiteracyWeek.ca. And there's some great resources and tools, as well as some awesome testimonials from both teachers and students about how they have engaged with media literacy and embraced it as part of their everyday lives in the classroom and with students. We wanted to just take a moment to share a little bit of the Media Literacy Week website with you, because it is a Canadian resource, and it's something that I feel like as educators, when you move through the website, you'll find things that can motivate you, engage you, and encourage you to maybe look at how media literacy is being talked about in your classroom. One of the great spaces that we came across was the Get Involved space, and I looked at the promo kit first and I thought, oh, I wonder if this kit costs money, and it really doesn't. What's interesting is you can tweet something, you can share a Facebook post, you can share text with families, there's articles to read and share, so it's quick, easy, and accessible, which is great. And then there's another section which is really motivating if you're unsure where to start, or you have a colleague that's unsure where to start. You can go into the In Action section, and it's a spot where it highlights educators and youth across our country who are working to make media literacy education a priority. As teachers, we often hear about ideas and things that we know would be valuable and important to our students, but don't always know where to start. And if we're talking about media literacy, we wanted to provide you with some ways of thinking and opportunities to take and use in your classroom. So some of the things that you could try with your students were just searching literacy. So how do you do that? What does that look like? Where do you go? What do you need to decipher when you get there? Just use the digital tools that are available to you and your students, and engage in a conversation about what you're seeing. Use social media for teaching, trying not to recreate the wheel, so to speak, but using websites like Media Smarts that we just talked about to give you a starting point and give you somewhere to go. So our final question to you is, how will you take what you know and use it to help promote the conversation about media literacy in schools? With your colleagues, with your students' families. What is that going to look like for you?